Okay, so today we're going to talk about a topic I actually love, and I think we have a lot of really important voices today. Riley, you have clinic manager experiences.
Mhm.
So when it comes to conversions, you've actually coached teams that focus on doing that. And on my end, when I think about conversion optimization, on the marketing side, it's felt over the years. I've been doing this in the med spa space for about 7 years, and it feels kind of like there's this trend, almost like a hot potato of marketing into operations, where it feels like, okay, once we've run the ad and we've gotten the lead, our work is done. Wipe our hands of it, right? And we haven't done that on the alpha side, but that is kind of a trend and things that I've heard from medical practices. So what I'd love to talk about is a little bit on the operations side. Let's talk about how we can maximize each lead. Andrea, I'd love for you to talk about qualification of those leads as well. And just kind of talking about the partnership, right? Because Andrea, before we started rolling, you were talking about how there is no divide between marketing and sales. They're like one cohesive system. Maybe we could start there and just kind of, if you could talk a little bit about what that looks like to you.
So sales and marketing really are part of the same team. Departmentally, it naturally makes sense to have a divide there. The specific motions that each team takes on, they're unique, they're distinctive. However, functionally, they are playing the role of facilitating that customer journey. It's the business analog to what's happening on the patient journey. When they're first becoming aware. This is where marketing comes into play. Marketing brings awareness among our total addressable market to the existence of the brand, the credibility, the authority. We make that introduction, we make that first impression. Marketing facilitates that journey up until, really all the way through. I like to say everything the light touches is marketing.
Go. I love that. Yeah.
Sales, you all are marketers too.
Yeah.
So, and we're saying sales here, we are talking about operations, the field, front desk team, and I would even say providers in the clinic. All of you are playing a role in getting patients to transact with us, but build that loyalty and keep them coming back, retaining them and evangelizing them into loyalists. So marketing does the first leg of that sprint, that relay race. There is a point after lead capture at which sales comes into the picture, but they're continuing that patient journey facilitation, and there's a role in assets that marketing can provide that can train them on, help with the scripting aspects of that to make them more effective in that conversion into an active patient.
Yeah.
But what happens when they don't convert?
Yeah, that's a great question, right?
We don't need all of our leads who don't convert out the gates to just fall on the floor and never be contacted again. We can take a concerted approach to segmenting those folks based upon their reasons for not booking and retarget them over time so that there's an opportunity to continue monetizing those.
Yeah. Supporting, right, on the marketing front. And that's the piece that I love, is thinking about all of the different stages of the patient journey. Like, if we were to, as marketers, not take responsibility past the lead portion, that feels like it's just the starting point. Like, some people think of it as once I've got the lead, I'm done. The way that I feel like at Alpha we view it is, once I've got the lead, I'm started. So this is where I focus now. Lead, then from lead to booking, then from booking to visit, then from visit to rebooked, then from rebooked to retained, right? That's kind of the journey that I view in the marketing space, and where our responsibility is to support. You sound like you have something to say on that, Andrea.
Better yet, get them into a membership program.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Retain them through a membership program. Within that flow, if we were to just entertain my brain on that's kind of how the patient journey works. On the operations side, I would love, Riley, for you to speak to what inside the clinics, and maybe even on the provider level too, what it looks like to maximize each lead. Because there is things that we can support on the digital front, but when it comes to actually boots on the ground in the clinic, obviously we're not in the clinic. So if you could speak a little bit to that.
Definitely. Well, when we utilize our CRM, that's one thing I want you to talk about, which is speed to lead. But when I was in the clinic, one of the things that I focused on the most was our conversion rates on the phones, because we know if a patient is picking up the phone and calling, they already are probably a more qualified patient. And so when we actually started looking at the conversion rate, our goal was 65%, but we told our team 80% because we obviously wanted to be the best. And we knew if we said 80%, they'd probably fall to 65%. But once we really started illuminating that and showing them every single week, okay, this is how many calls we got. This is how many patients were booked. These are the reasons that they didn't book. And then that is something that we would work on marketing with, because if we were getting a ton of leads calling for treatments that we don't offer, we would say, okay, maybe we need to look at our website. Is there something with our SEO that patients are looking up laser hair removal and we're popping up? We don't do that. Why is that happening? But once we really focused on coaching our team members, listening to phone calls, going through every single step. Okay, the patient called and we went from, oh yes, it's $15 unit for Botox. Do you want to book an appointment? Like, we need to add a couple more steps in there, credentialing the provider, credentialing the practice. Then you get the ask from the patient to book the appointment.
And that's a really, really good call out. We're talking about leads who come in through inbound calls. There can be major differences between the lead sources, whether they call in directly. That's about as hand raiser as you can get.
Yeah.
So these are people who are actively looking. Maybe some are simple inquiries, but a lot of those folks are looking to book immediately. Someone who fills out a web form, that inherently is a lower touch. Some of them could be equally high intent as a phone call, but oftentimes that's just simply not the case. And you wouldn't necessarily expect the conversion rate on follow-ups with web form leads to be as high. So I think managing expectations around that is really important. That doesn't mean that you lose any ambition in lead conversion off of web forms, but just calibrate appropriately and apply different tactics to improve the success on those.
Yeah. And that's a great call out. One of the questions that I was going to ask is forms versus calls, which are more valuable. And I think that the general consensus, that's also mine, is I like to call phone call leads like the Little Caesars pizza. They're like hot and ready, because they're calling because they're ready to book.
Yes.
So thinking about that being like the creme de la creme of leads, where we prioritize them and how on the marketing side we help to support that. One of the things is missed call text back. So you talked about conversion rates. The other thing that we focus on as well is the missed call rates, because from a marketing perspective specifically, if you spend 10 grand and then the missed call rate is 50%, then you just flush $5,000 down the toilet, which isn't a great feeling.
No.
The conversion rate is also really important, but let's actually make sure that we're picking up those phones. So one of the things that we've helped to support on the operations front is, let's say our clinic is busy. They've got patients in front of them. What do you do in that scenario where there's actually nobody to pick up the phone? And there's training involved and you want to like help them. Okay, let's multitask. Let's put them on hold. Let's do all that stuff, which is an operations thing. But in the instances where you just can't do that, one of the things that I have found massive value from is missed call text back. So patient calls in, clinic is busy. Typically they would hang up and then go on to the next business. Whereas if we do the missed call text back, missed call happens, they hang up the phone, but then they receive a text right away that says, hey, so sorry we missed your call. We were helping another patient. How can I assist you? And just through doing that, Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're almost at like, I don't know, 600 or 700,000 in recovered revenue just over the past year and some change. So thinking about just that, right?
That's
like
at the low end.
That's on the low end. Yeah. It'll be pessimistic. Just thinking about that. And that's something that clinics can do fairly easy. There's platforms like CallRail is a great one. They just have it baked in. So as long as you have a tracking number on your platforms, wherever people are calling, if you miss the call, then they'll get a text. Just have your team respond to it. And then when they actually have time, now you've recovered all of that revenue. So I think that's one way that we can help support on the conversion standpoint.
And I agree with what Mitch was saying. And as I said earlier, the people calling in, those are very high intent hand raisers.
Yeah.
What can be extremely beneficial, though, about web forms is the opportunity to capture more information about the leads up front, which brings us full circle back to the lead qualification subtopic that we're addressing. So being able to segment more specifically about what their intent is extremely valuable in driving our capabilities to retarget them through the right channels with the right messaging. It informs the sales team, the front desk teams in terms of how to structure the conversations when they might also help out with that follow-up. And something important to call out is to have a protocol and a coordinated system with the ops team so that marketing and ops are marching in the same direction and the right hand knows what the left is doing in terms of how these leads are being addressed. And having a CRM gives these teams a central single source of truth so that they can actually see the activities on individual contacts as they go through and determine how and when to reach out. So another point on lead qualification. Based on the different marketing campaigns and promotions that you're running, not all of the leads you generate are going to be ready to buy immediately. And what you want to avoid is overburdening your front desk team, your sales team, with working leads who we know aren't ready, but we didn't categorize them properly for the front desk or the sales team to know that. So use your software, use the signals you're capturing, and bucket those leads appropriately and queue them in the right places so that your sales team is only focused on those who have demonstrated readiness to come in. And you can enroll your lower intent leads or those where we simply don't have enough information on them yet. We can enroll them into separate nurturing streams and keep that outreach up, keep those touch points alive, capture more information, and then determine when they're qualified to be referred over to the sales team.
Yeah, that's so good. I think we need to do a full podcast episode on nurturing in general, because I think nurturing can mean so many different things, right? And I think that those who are listening would probably benefit from also the how, right? Like what segments, and maybe we can cue that up. But that's so good. We could talk on speed to lead a little bit too. There was a stat that Allergan gave that was if you don't respond to a lead within the first 5 minutes, because we have such an ADD generation at this point, we're just very distracted. The conversion of that, at least the fact that they would pick up, goes down by 90x, which is like mind-boggling. 5 minutes, that's our window. And so the thing that I've found, I'm passionate about software. I know that all of Alpha is passionate about software, but the way that can help support is, okay, form fill side. We've got the call side. Maybe software helped with missed call text back. On the form submission side, what happens after that inquiry happens? And if we leave it for 5 minutes, whether it's call or text, then we lose them. So let's deploy something that's automated, right? So that we can actually get that lead engaged. And I'd be curious for you, Riley, too, to hear some of like the impact on those automations on the clinic and their capacity, right? Because it is a hybrid role to be a sales team member, but then also a front desk team member who is customer service and helping people check out and servicing the patients in front of them. So when it comes to your capacity as a sales team / split role, GSE, what impact do automations play into that? Do you feel like that's a helpful thing?
Definitely. I think it adds, all of our team members would know that if the phone rings, you pick it up before the second ring. That's always what we strive for. But if you're, caught up with a patient or something, you're never going to say to a patient, "Oh, sorry, I need to pick up the phone right now."
Let me just text somebody.
Yes. So it is nice. It just adds a bit of a safety net, because prior to having this, if we didn't answer, then you're having to go back, find the phone number, call the patient back. Whereas with the automation, it just kind of calms the sales team down knowing, listen, focus on the patient in front of you. We will get back to this lead. And I think it just makes the whole team much more efficient.
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of weeds out the tire kickers a little bit too.
Yes.
Like you, Andrea, talked about qualifying and nurturing, which is a whole other thing that I think we should touch on a little bit, because not all of the leads that opt in today are ready to buy today. Sometimes they have questions. Sometimes they need a little bit more information. But when you think about how we leverage the clinic's time, it helps to kind of weed out the people who are, I guess, in a positive way, ready to go right now. Like if your interaction with automation is, oh, I'm actually going to reply to this. Now we focus on those ones because they're more in the hot and ready category as they would in a phone call. It kind of like equalizes that playing field a little bit. And so that's one way that I think is really helpful. Do you want to talk a little bit about nurturing too? Or did you have anything else?
Well, first I wanted to talk about the missed call text back program, and that the speed to lead also manifests not just in terms of the automated text response, but then an actual human continuing the conversation through text rather than calling them back. I kind of think of it as the real world, non-business world equivalent of, this really could have just been an email. Why did we call a meeting?
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like it's both parties doing themselves or doing each other and themselves that favor of, I don't think we need a meeting on this. We can probably handle this through a text or an email. So I would like to hear from Riley in terms of the productivity of the SMS exchanges, as opposed to the burden of always having to pick up the phone and have the conversation. I call it a burden. That's a misnomer, but sometimes the texting, I'd imagine, is more efficient.
Yes, definitely. And like you were saying, Mitch, sometimes it does. If you're corresponding with someone via text and now you're on like your 5th text exchange and you're not hearing back from them, okay, we might just put this into, contact later. But it does allow the team to just text with someone, and then when they're ready to book, give their credit card information, give them a call, and then book them there. And you can't talk to 8 people at the same time on the phone, right? But you can text 8 people at the same time. It might be a little bit difficult, but you can still do it. And so it does allow the sales team to be much more efficient.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so did you have anything else to add?
Not on that, but you did ask me about nurturing.
Yeah.
So with lead nurturing, this is where segmentation of leads gets to be really important. So understanding the marketing source, the campaign, the messages that they received, that's an obvious point of segmentation up front. But then also, based upon that lead format, the mechanism by which they were captured, did they call? And we don't necessarily know much about their intent based off of that phone call. Did they submit a web form where maybe we captured a bit more information to help know exactly what it is they're looking for, their buying readiness based off of what they submitted through that mechanism? Did we have some missed call text back exchange, even just more on the automated end without a sales touch? Or from any of those categories, has there been some sort of sales exchange captured, memorialized in the CRM in a way that we can extract data based off of the details of those exchanges to know their level of intent and the service areas that they're the most interested in? You can take the combination of those variables and figure out how to segment your leads into different audiences and determine what is the best workflow into which they should be enrolled, and what channels, what sorts of touch points are the most appropriate to incorporate into that, at what cadence. How do we nurture the relationship in doing that based off of what we know about where they stand in their journey? Because you don't want to unnaturally push someone to transact with you when they clearly are not ready. You need to honor where they're at, but just because they aren't buying ready doesn't mean that you're dismissive of them and letting them languish and ultimately never become your patient. So understanding where they're at and actually having a plan that you execute to nurture them into becoming a patient is super important.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so we talked a lot about lead to booking and conversion optimization in that regard. Let's talk a little bit about booking to visit, because that's another thing that's critical. You could have fantastic optimization on, your missed calls, fantastic on the booking rates, form and call. But then if 60%, and that's a real statistic, by the way, I've seen cancellation no-show rates at 60%. Um, More than 50% of what you spend on ads goes out the window.
Mhm.
So imagine what you can do if you can fix that problem. Riley, on your end, when you were on the clinic manager role, what were some of the things that your team did to help make sure that the people who committed to a booking actually showed?
Yes, so we would definitely follow up with them prior to their visit. We have everything is set up automatically. So we have
Hmm.
all automations, text and email if they opt into it. And that's something that we had to, coach the front desk to say to. You have to ask them, do you opt into email and text reminders for your
Mm-hmm.
appointments? Once you're able to do that, and then a phone call typically the day before reminding them of the appointment, we really have had, I don't know exactly what our cancellation rate was, but I know that it was very low,
Mm-hmm.
because you're just reminding the patient you have this appointment and then also instilling a cancellation fee
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I know sometimes those can be a little bit controversial. Do we do them? Do we not do them? But what we found with our practice is just for the provider's time, we had to put something in place so they weren't getting, 6 consults in a day that just weren't showing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially when it comes to um, paid ads, typically the show up rate, the commitment rate might be less unless you build that trust right
Mhm.
off the bat, especially when it comes to things like referrals. If you are referring, we've done a couple of surveys on this to see who our top spending patients are. And the top spending patients typically also refer the most people. And
Mhm.
when we looked at the those who were referred, the only reason this is like what they agreed to on the survey is the only reason why they trusted this practice is because of the trust from their friend. So there's a lot that goes into marketing when you're trying to earn that trust. You kind of get that borrowed trust when you get the referrals, but when you have paid ads, you have to build that trust over the course of the patient journey. um, Reminding people just in general that you have an appointment is a great start, because I mean, I've no showed too, just because I completely forgot. We're
Forgot.
busy. Yeah, people are busy, and one of the things that cancellation policy is a really interesting thing. Some even do deposits. So I'm
Mhm.
curious what your guys' thoughts
Mhm.
are on that. But for those who don't necessarily do a cancellation rate, what I've also seen, if you don't have a cancellation policy, one time for one partner, we implemented the cancellation policy and the no-show rate went from 50% down to 10%, which
Wow.
was fantastic. But then what we also noticed is that instead of fixing the overall fact that cancellation plus no-shows were 60%, it just kind of moved the ball to a different part of the field, because it didn't stop the fact that people weren't showing up.
Mm.
It just made them tell us that they weren't going to show up a little bit earlier so that we're not quite scrambling as much. And one of the things that I've seen on the software side, on the marketing side, that we've been able to do to help is something that we've called the accountability workflow. And all it looks like is basically just a quick text from your provider. It's almost like a handshake text. It's deployed from the CRM, which is why a CRM, to your point, Andrea, is so important, because it tracks everything. And in those different stages of the patient journey, you can help on those places. So if somebody gets booked, we just instruct the team, okay, who did they book with? Was it with, Brenna? Okay, tag them with Brenna. And then in an hour, they're going to get a text that looks like it's from Brenna that says, here's my photo, here's my Instagram. Just wanted to put a face to the name. So excited to meet you for your appointment. And now goes from a faceless company to somebody that actually I'm booking with.
That is such a great call out. And I was going to say something in a similar vein
Yeah.
that the devil can be in the details. I'm sure that we've all received appointment reminders
Mm-hmm.
that are the most vanilla,
Yeah.
automated, computerized, just the driest, most forgettable message.
Yeah.
When there's an actual opportunity to personify it even if it is through automation, but put faces to names, invite them to add you to their contacts in your phone, and it has a picture instead of just a letter. Just doing simple things like that, it's building the relationship and cultivating that trust further. It's a missed opportunity if you're not personalizing and then adding some of your own personality into those messages. Just because they're automated transactional messages doesn't mean that they have to be dry and forgettable.
Yeah. I like to think of it like person to person communication. Yes, I'm in a business, but I'm a person, right? So you've got that on the sales side of things, and then also on the provider side of things. You just want to personalize it as much as humanly possible throughout the whole process, because the less you feel like a faceless company, the more people trust you. And that's the biggest thing when you're trying to get people to actually show up to your appointment.
In marketing, a lot of it's the default that we talk about personalization for the patient, but it's also personifying your brand and your providers.
And just to close it with that a stat, the partner that was at a 60% cancellation no-show rate, just through sending that text out, went to a 20% cancellation no-show rate. That's how, like, devil's in the details. Think about how drastic that is. Just one little thing. And so when you look at CRM, tracking that is one thing. You have to know what those stats are to see how some of the things that you're doing are impacting the results, but then also just being able to actually see it so you can do something. If we didn't have it in a CRM, we wouldn't be able to do that. So that's one of the things that's critical about marketing, is having a CRM. So we talked about lead to booking, booking to visit. Now visit, they're in the chair. Okay. One question is, how do we maximize that? Which I'd love to hear your perspective on, Riley. But then also, how do we make sure that they come back? So let's talk a little bit about rebooking rate, if you could take some of those.
Definitely. That was one thing that we pretty early on, once we integrated with Alpha, our clinic, once we started using Power BI, seeing the rebooking rate just kind of blew the lid off of everything, because we thought we were doing so great with it. And then we were somewhere between like a 48 to a 55% rebooking rate, which is really not very good. So one thing that we did, which we got from Beck, was all of our providers started walking their patients to the door and giving a handoff to the front desk team. Because if the front desk team said, Ingrid wants to see you back in 2 weeks for your follow-up, they'd say, that's okay. I never do that. But if Ingrid walked them out to the front desk and said, okay, now don't forget, I need to see you back in 2 weeks. Riley's going to go ahead and get you rebooked. We would rebook, they would come back. Then when they come back for that visit, that's when we rebook them for their next 3 to 4 month Botox visit, or maybe they want to try filler, maybe they want to try a laser. So once we implemented that one little thing with the rebooking, our rate went up to 75%.
Holy smokes.
And some of the providers, they were getting competitive. So you were seeing some of them were doing really great. Some of them were kind of slacking off a little bit. And so once we started illuminating that and they started really focusing on it, that's when we started to see that KPI do really well.
Data brings clarity.
Yes.
So that you know you need to row in the right direction, right? It's hard to focus if you don't know where to go.
When the patient comes in for the consultation, you've really been setting the stage for everything up to that point. And we've credentialed, at this point, you've done all of these things. You've credentialed the practice, you've credentialed the provider. So when the patient comes in, they need to experience all of these things that you said. This is why, if you have a consultation fee, this is why you have a consultation fee. So they're coming in, and for the provider, obviously they're listening, but one of the things that we found that worked really well, if the patient has concerns, also coming up with either a beauty plan or a personalized treatment plan that's setting them up for a year. And then that way you're able to lead that in to the rebooking, keep them as a retained patient, and they're feeling, a sense of loyalty towards you because you've put together a whole plan with them.
Yeah, I love that. Setting the stage for full year. Hey, this is what it's going to look like when you come back. And then here is my follow through, which is I'm going to walk you to the front desk.
Yes.
And then I'm going to make sure that you actually rebook. It's so funny that you say that too, because in the situations where I have been with a provider, when the provider walks with me to the front desk, I feel like I'm trapped. Like I can't escape. I'm like, oh no, so there is that level of accountability that I think is really, really important.
Accountability, but also just you feel taken care of.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
you didn't go to a mill. You came in for thoughtful, consultative interaction, treatment, perhaps if it led to that on the spot. But having crafted a plan together about such a sensitive thing for so many patients, that's kind of an intimate interaction. And so how does it feel to have that conversation and then be left to walk yourself out the door? It's such a sharp contrast. I feel like the upside of that last touch and that handoff, that warm handoff to rebooking is just so consequential in the best of ways. And the opposite of that can be so damaging.
Yeah. Oh man, well, so good. This was such a good conversation. Hopefully for people who are listening, you also got I feel like there were a lot of nuggets, like very high impact nuggets throughout, that just one quick little change could double the amount of conversions that you get from lead flow. You got to look at missed call rate, conversion rate on the phones, qualifying, making sure that you aren't missing those opportunities, leveraging software as much as you possibly can, and making sure that we're actually supporting, right? Because sales and marketing / operations are married hand in hand. You can't separate them. We have to be a team, otherwise it doesn't work.